early in my career, I had a hard drive fail, and there were a few times where I accidentally deleted stuff that I didn't mean to, and it was gone forever. Since then, I've put together a backup system that has kept all of my files safe all the way back to 2009, about 15 years. So I want to walk you through this backup system that I use so that you never lose a photo or video. I came up with this system just kind of thinking through all the possible things that could happen. Obviously, hard drives can fail, you can lose them, you can accidentally delete stuff. And even if you have backups on multiple hard drives, maybe someone breaks in, or you have a fire or a flood or any number of things that could happen to a single space. So this system will protect you from any of those things. Now, like I said, I came up with this on my own, but I recently learned that it's actually not uncommon. It's called the 3-2-1 backup system. Let's go over how this system works, and then I'm going to give you some real world examples at the beginner, the intermediate, and the pro level. So the 3 in 3-2-1 is 3 copies of your data. At all times, you should have 3 copies. If you go to delete something, make sure it's stored in 3 other places. 2 is that you want your data stored on 2 different types of storage, different types of hard drives, things like that. And then 1 is that you want 1 copy of your data offsite, so that if something does happen to your office or your studio, there's a fire or there's a flood and you lose all the hard drives there, you still have a copy somewhere offsite that's safe, and you can use that to rebuild your 3-2-1 system. So how do you set this system up for yourself? Let's get into a few options at those different levels, beginner, intermediate, pro. Starting at the beginner level, if you're pretty new and you don't have a ton of data, maybe you store all your photos and videos on your main computer, and that's your first copy. And that's your working drive. All your edits, all your changes happen on your computer, and then you just back up to a hard drive, and then maybe you back that up either to a second hard drive that you keep off site, maybe in your car glove box or at work or something. Or that third copy can be something like the cloud. Maybe you use Dropbox, and that's your offsite storage copy. So then you have your computer, you have a hard drive, and you have something like Dropbox. That's your 3 copies. You have 2 different types, the cloud and a hard drive, and then one of those is stored offsite. So that's a great system for a beginner, but you're going to start to run out of storage space pretty quickly. And then you kind of get into the intermediate level of this system. So instead of storing data on my computer, I have a working drive, and this is a 4 terabyte SSD drive. So it's very fast, and I can edit 4K video from there. I can edit big photo files, pretty much anything I need. It's about as fast as the drive that's inside my computer. So like I said, that's my working drive. That sees changes almost daily as I edit photos or import new media, things like that. That's the drive that I'm working on all the time. So at the intermediate level, maybe you have a smaller working drive like that, and then you have a couple bigger drives. They make up to 12, maybe even 14 terabyte drives now. And that's where you run your backup system. So your working drive constantly gets backed up to those drives. And again, one of those is stored offsite. Maybe you're still using cloud as that third offsite method, but then you're gonna need 3 of those bigger drives, because your working drive, if it's a smaller, fast SSD like this, it's not gonna be able to store everything. So technically you have 4 copies of your working data. And as that working drive fills up, you can make sure things are backed up in 3 spots and then start deleting data off of that working drive. And then beyond that intermediate level, as you get more and more data, you kind of get into the pro level. And that's where I'm at with data storage. I have almost 18 terabytes of data, everything that I've shot back to 2009, I have some stuff from 2008. That's where I had that hard drive failure. But from 2009 on, every photo and video that I've ever shot is archived and stored safely. So I'm gonna go over my system. It's a little more robust than 3-2-1. I have more than 3 copies of my data, but let me just run you through all those copies and why. So like I said, this is my main working drive. This has important business documents that I need to keep on hand. It has my photo library for this year. It has current YouTube videos that I'm working on this year. Pretty much everything, a year's worth of data, gets stored on here, and it sees the most changes. This is where I edit photos, I edit my YouTube videos, stuff like that is working off this drive. And then when I'm at home, that drive gets backed up to a RAID system. And a RAID is basically just a way of setting up multiple hard drives to work together as one big storage pool. So I have 2 RAID boxes. One of them is set up as RAID 0. So it's 2 hard drives with no redundancy. So if either one of those fails, the whole drive is dead, but it'll take both of those hard drives and put them together as one, so I have a lot of storage and it's faster than an individual hard drive. So this drive's fast enough that I can work from it. I normally don't unless I need to go back to some of my archive stuff. If it's current stuff, again, that working drive is much faster. But this drive is the first backup in my system. And then this gets backed up to another RAID 5 system. And a RAID 5 is much more secure. If any of the hard drives fail, you just replace it and it will rebuild all the data from the other drives onto that hard drive. So you don't lose anything if you have a single drive failure. And then instead of using a cloud service, just because I have so much data that I wouldn't be able to keep up, I'd always be transferring stuff, I have an offsite archive of hard drives that have everything organized by year, and those get updated pretty often, so I just have that offsite backup. In addition to this RAID home system, I also have a handful of smaller travel drives. This is a 5 terabyte spinning hard drive, and I have a bunch of these little SanDisk SSDs, and I use those hard drives a lot when I'm traveling. So I still want multiple copies of my data, and I still want it secure in a few different places. So my working drive will get backed up to these portable hard drives, and then, if we're traveling in our trailer, I'll leave one in the trailer and one in the car, so they're separate. If we're traveling internationally, I'll maybe store one in my backpack or leave it in the hostel, and then I'll keep one just in my pocket at all times. If someone robs us or we lose our backpack or something like that, we still have that data spread out in multiple places, and hopefully we keep at least one copy that makes it back home with us, and we still have all our media. One thing that I do want to mention about my archived hard drives don't last forever. If you leave them sitting and don't power them up, they start to lose their data integrity. So if you're going to copy me and you have some offsite hard drives that have your data archived, make sure you spin those up once a year and just make sure that none of that data is corrupted. That's also happened to me. I let a hard drive sit thinking the data was safe. A couple years later, I go and check it and it's all gone. Luckily, it was fine. I have that backed up in other places, but it is one thing to remember that those hard drives, if they don't get powered up and they're just stored in your closet for years, that data could be lost, and then you don't have that offsite backup. And if you need it, that's not good, right? So make sure those hard drives keep their integrity. One more thing about hard drives that I forgot to mention. You don't want to buy all your hard drives at the same time from the same dealer. If they all came off the line together and there's like one little tiny electrical component in there that fails, it's probably going to fail on all of the drives. And drives just get old. Over time, they're going to fail. And you don't want them all to be the same exact age. Typically, I try to space out where I buy my drives, either buy them from different manufacturers, buy different brands of drives, things like that. You don't just want all of the same thing from the same place all at once. To run all my backups, I use a program called ChronoSync, and I really love that. Not sponsored or anything, but I've been using it for years, and it will scan both of the drives and then just copy over the data that's different. So if you update a video library, you make some edits, it'll make those changes over to your backup copies without needing to delete data and rewrite the entire library. Same with photos, it'll scan your folders and just add the new photos that aren't there, instead of you having to manually pick what needs to be backed up. So I use that program to back up all my data. It can also do data checks, so if you pull those hard drives out of storage and you want to make sure the data matches on the 2 drives, it can do that. So look into that if you're looking for a good backup program. I think I covered everything for this video. I'm going to link some of my favorite hard drives down below, some travel hard drives, some of the bigger drives that I talked about kind of at that beginner intermediate level. And then I'll also link to some RAID systems. I'll link to one of these boxes that I use. The RAID 5 box I use is kind of outdated and I really want to upgrade, so I'll link to the one that I want to upgrade to. I've heard really good things about it, and hopefully that helps you kind of get your own backup system set and all your data is super secure. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Catch you guys in the next video. Thanks.